The wrench slipped from my grease-stained fingers as I heard my daughter's voice cut through the garage wall like a rusty blade. 2 in the morning, and here I was, under the hood of my beat-up Ford, trying to coax life back into an engine that had more miles on it than hope left in my marriage. Dad's a loser, Mom. Face it. Jasper wants you for who you really are. He's not afraid to love you in public like Dad is. I froze, my hand still reaching for the wrench that had clattered onto the concrete floor. 18 years old, and Mandy had already mastered the art of character assassination. Through the thin wall separating our garage from the kitchen, I could hear my wife Celeste's measured response. Mandy, it's complicated. Your father and I have history. Yeah, ancient history. Jasper's got a future. He's got plans. He's not stuck fixing other people's broken houses for pocket change. Nothing like hearing your replacement's name at 2 in the morning. At least the truck's engine still runs, I thought, wiping my hands on an already filthy rag. Unlike my marriage, which had been running on fumes for the better part of 3 years. I'd been Evan Mitchell for 42 years, and for the last 20 of those, I'd been married to Celeste Parker Mitchell, an ambitious woman who'd climbed from small-town nobody to senior architect at Brennan and Associates. Me? I'd remained right where I began, repairing what others had destroyed, renovating houses in our fading industrial town of Millbrook, Ohio. The conversation in the kitchen continued, and I found myself straining to hear every word, even though each one felt like a nail being driven into a coffin I'd been building for years. He makes me feel alive again, Mandy. When was the last time your father and I went anywhere together? When did he last surprise me with anything besides another project truck in the driveway? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, and tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. I looked around the garage at my collection of half-finished projects. She wasn't wrong, but she wasn't right either. Mom, you deserve better. Jasper's taking you to that gallery opening next week, right? Dad would never do that. No, he wouldn't. The finality in Celeste's voice hit me harder than I expected. I'd heard that tone before. It was the same one she used when discussing failed construction projects at work. Clinical, dismissive, final. I grabbed a beer from the mini-fridge I'd installed next to my workbench and settled into the lawn chair that served as my thinking spot. The garage had become my refuge over the past few years, the only place in our house where I could exist without feeling like an intruder in my own life. Jasper Whitmore. 28 years old, creative director at Celeste's firm, and apparently the answer to all her problems. I'd met him exactly 3 times, twice at company parties where he'd looked right through me, and once when he'd stopped by the house to discuss a project with Celeste. That discussion had lasted 4 hours and had involved an awful lot of laughter for a work meeting. The kitchen fell silent, and I heard footsteps on the stairs. Mandy's door slammed with the force that only a teenager could muster, followed by the softer click of the master bedroom door. I was alone with my thoughts and a truck that refused to start reliably. My phone buzzed on the workbench. A text from Rafe Sullivan, my best friend since high school and the owner of Sullivan's Bar and Grill on the rough side of town. You still up? Got something you need to see. I grabbed my keys and headed out into the night. Millbrook looked different at 2:30 in the morning, emptier, more honest somehow. The closed storefronts and dim streetlights couldn't hide what our town had become since the steel mill closed 5 years ago. Half the downtown buildings stood empty, their windows covered with plywood or newspaper. The other half housed pawn shops, check-cashing places, and bars that opened too early and closed too late. Rafe's place sat on the corner of 3rd and Main, a 2-story brick building that had housed everything from a hardware store to a dance studio over the past century. The neon sign flickered intermittently, casting red shadows across the empty street. I found Rafe behind the bar, polishing glasses with the methodical precision of a man who'd been doing the same job for 15 years. At 6'2" and built like the amateur boxer he'd once been, Rafe commanded respect in a neighborhood where respect was earned through actions, not words. "Thought you might show up," he said without looking up. "Heard some interesting conversation tonight." "Yeah? From who?" "Your wife's friend Lila was in here earlier with her book club, had a few too many Cosmos, and started running her mouth about Celeste's new situation. Lila Brennan, wife of Patrick Brennan, owner of the architectural firm where Celeste worked. Lila had never liked me, had made that clear from day one. She thought Celeste had married beneath her station, and she'd spent 20 years trying to convince my wife of the same thing." "What kind of new situation?" Rafe set down the glass and looked at me directly. "The kind where your wife's been seen at the Marriott downtown every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 2 months. Always with the same young guy, always checking in under different names." The beer in my stomach turned sour. "You sure about this?" "Lila was bragging about it, Evan. Said Celeste finally found someone who appreciated her artistic sensibilities. Said it was about time she stopped wasting her life on someone who couldn't see past the next repair job." I stared at my reflection in the mirror behind the bar. 42 years old, graying at the temples, hands permanently stained from 20 years of manual labor. When had I stopped being the man Celeste married and become the man she was embarrassed to be seen with? "There's more," Rafe continued. "Lila mentioned something about a weekend trip they're planning, some kind of creative retreat upstate, just the two of them." "When?" "This weekend." I finished my beer and stood up. "Thanks for the heads up. Evan, what are you going to do?" I looked at my oldest friend, the only person in Millbrook who'd never made me feel like I needed to apologize for who I was or what I did for a living. "I'm going to give my wife exactly what she wants," I said. "Her freedom." Thursday morning arrived gray and cold, matching my mood perfectly. Celeste had left early for work, claiming she had a breakfast meeting with a potential client. Mandy was still asleep, probably dreaming about her next TikTok video or whatever it was 18-year-olds did to avoid thinking about real life. I sat at our kitchen table, drinking coffee from a mug that read, "World's Greatest Dad," a Father's Day gift from Mandy when she was 12, and still thought I hung the moon. Those days felt like ancient history now. The house around me told the story of our marriage in layers. The hardwood floors I'd refinished myself when we first moved in. The kitchen cabinets I'd built by hand during the second year, when Celeste was pregnant with Mandy, and we were still planning our future together. The crown molding I'd installed room by room over 5 years, working evenings and weekends to make our house into something special. Now it felt like a museum dedicated to a relationship that had died so gradually I hadn't noticed when it stopped breathing. Celeste's phone sat on the counter, plugged into its charger. She'd forgotten it in her rush to get to her breakfast meeting. In 20 years of marriage, I'd never looked through her phone. Privacy had always been important to both of us, a boundary we'd respected even during our worst arguments. But Lila's words from the night before echoed in my head. The Marriott, every Tuesday and Thursday, different names. I picked up the phone and swiped the screen. It wasn't locked. Celeste had never been paranoid about security. The home screen showed 17 unread text messages and 4 missed calls, all from a contact labeled JW. Jasper Whitmore. My finger hovered over the messages for a long moment. Once I opened them, there would be no going back. Whatever I found would change everything, and despite the gradual unraveling of our marriage, I wasn't sure I was ready for everything to shift. But I opened them anyway. The first message was from 2 hours ago. "Missing you already. Last night was incredible." The second, "Can't wait for our weekend getaway. I've got everything planned." The third, "P.S. Loved the photos you sent. You're beautiful." I scrolled up through weeks of messages, each one a small knife twisted in my chest. Plans for secret meetings, discussions about hotel rooms, intimate details about their relationship that made it clear this wasn't some casual fling. This was a full-blown affair that had been going on for months. but it was the photos that finally broke something inside me. Pictures of my wife that I'd never seen. Intimate shots taken in hotel rooms, in Jasper's apartment, in places I'd never been invited. Celeste looked different in these photos. Younger, happier, alive in a way she hadn't looked at home in years. The last photo was a selfie of the two of them together, taken in what looked like an expensive restaurant. Celeste was laughing at something Jasper had said, her hand resting on his chest, her wedding ring conspicuously absent from her finger. I set the phone back on the counter and walked outside. Our neighborhood was quiet at 9 in the morning. Most people were at work or school, living their normal lives, dealing with normal problems. I stood in my driveway and looked at our house, the house I'd spent 20 years improving, the house where I'd raised my daughter, the house that was supposed to represent everything we'd built together. Now it just looked like a building. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, was watering her flower garden next door. She waved and called out, "Morning, Evan." "Beautiful day, isn't it?" "Sure is, Mrs. Patterson, sure is." But it wasn't beautiful. It was the day my marriage officially died, even though I was apparently the last person to get the news. I went back inside and called the bank. Our joint checking account held $23,847, money we'd been saving for a vacation that would never happen, home improvements that would never get made, a future that would never arrive. "I'd like to transfer funds from our joint account to my personal account," I told the customer service representative. "How much would you like to transfer, Mr. Mitchell?" "All of it." 20 minutes later, I'd moved every dollar from our joint accounts into accounts that only had my name on them. I canceled the credit cards that Celeste used for her shopping trips and business expenses. I called our insurance company and removed her from our auto policy. If Celeste wanted freedom, I was going to give it to her. Complete freedom, the kind that came without a safety net. My phone rang. "Rafe, how you holding up?" "Found the proof," I said. "You were right about everything." "I'm sorry, man. I really am. What are you going to do?" I looked around the kitchen where I'd eaten breakfast with my family for 15 years, where we'd celebrated birthdays and holidays, where we'd had the fights that slowly eroded whatever love we'd once shared. "I'm going to show her what freedom really costs," I said. Celeste came home at 7:30 that evening, humming some song I didn't recognize. She looked radiant, her cheeks flushed, her hair perfectly styled, wearing a dress I'd never seen before. She looked like a woman who'd spent the day being appreciated, desired, made to feel special. She looked like a woman having an affair. "How was the breakfast meeting?" I asked from the living room, where I'd been waiting for 2 hours. "Oh, it went well. Very promising client." She didn't even look at me as she spoke, just headed straight for the kitchen to pour herself a glass of wine. "How was your day?" "Interesting." Had some time to think. "About what?" I joined her in the kitchen, leaning against the counter where her phone had been charging that morning. She still hadn't noticed it was there. "About us. About marriage. About freedom." Something in my tone must have caught her attention because she finally looked at me directly. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I've been thinking about what you said the other night. About marriage being restrictive. About people needing their freedom." Celeste set down her wine glass carefully. "Evan, what are you getting at?" "I'm getting at the fact that I agree with you. No one should be restrained by marriage. People should be free to pursue whatever makes them happy, don't you think?" "I suppose so, yes." "Good. I'm glad we're on the same page." I picked up her phone and held it out to her. "You forgot this morning." She took it quickly, maybe too quickly. "Thank you." 17 messages from JW, I said casually. "Must be important." The color drained from her face. "Evan, I can explain." "No need. You've been very clear about your feelings on personal freedom. I respect that. In fact, I've decided to give you all the freedom you want." "What does that mean?" I pulled out the bank statements I'd printed that afternoon and set them on the counter between us. It means I've closed our joint accounts, canceled the credit cards, removed you from the car insurance. You're free, Celeste. Completely free. She stared at the papers as if they were written in a foreign language. You can't do that. Actually, I can. I did. Everything was in both our names, which means either one of us could make changes. I made changes. Evan, you don't understand. This isn't what I wanted. Isn't it? You've been meeting Jasper at the Marriott every Tuesday and Thursday for 2 months. You're planning a weekend getaway together. You've been sending him photos that I'm pretty sure weren't meant for your husband to see. Sounds like freedom to me. Celeste sank into one of the kitchen chairs, her perfect composure finally cracking. How long have you known? Does it matter? The question is, what happens now? I never meant for it to happen this way. How did you mean for it to happen? Were you planning to ask for a divorce? Or were you just going to keep sneaking around indefinitely? She looked up at me with tears in her eyes, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I was confused. I felt trapped. Jasper makes me feel young again, makes me feel like I matter. And I don't? When was the last time we had a real conversation, Evan? When was the last time you looked at me the way you used to? When was the last time you made me feel like anything other than a roommate you occasionally sleep next to? Her words hit harder than I expected because they contained enough truth to hurt. We had grown apart. We had become roommates. But I'd thought that was something we could fix, something worth fighting for. Apparently, she'd thought it was something worth abandoning. So you decided to fix it by having an affair. I decided to fix it by finding someone who actually sees me. And what about Mandy? What about our family? Mandy's 18, Evan. She'll be fine. She understands that people grow apart, that sometimes marriages just run their course. She understands because you've been discussing this with her. She's known about Jasper. Celeste nodded slowly. She likes him. He treats her like an adult, not like a child. The betrayal felt complete now. Not only had my wife been cheating on me, but she'd recruited our daughter into the deception. They'd been planning my exit from their lives while I'd been in the garage, trying to fix engines and pretending our problems were temporary. Well, I said, standing up from the table, now you both have exactly what you want. Freedom from me. Where are you going? Out. To give you space to call Jasper and tell him the good news. You're finally free to be together without sneaking around. I headed for the door, then stopped and turned back. Oh, and Celeste? You might want to find somewhere else to stay this weekend. I'm having the locks changed. The last thing I heard as I left was the sound of her phone dialing. Rafe's bar was busier than usual for a Thursday night. The local crowd had gathered for their weekly ritual of complaining about work, politics, and life in general, while consuming enough alcohol to make their problems temporarily bearable. I found an empty stool at the end of the bar and ordered a whiskey. Rough night? Rafe asked, setting the drink in front of me. You could say that. Had the conversation. How'd it go? About as well as you'd expect. She didn't deny anything. Just tried to justify it. Rafe nodded knowingly. He'd been through his own divorce 3 years earlier when he'd discovered his ex-wife had been gambling away their savings at the casino 2 counties over. The experience had left him cynical about marriage and protective of his friends who were still fighting the good fight. What's your next move? Honestly, I have no idea. 20 years of marriage doesn't come with an instruction manual for what to do when it ends. You could fight for her. I looked at him over my whiskey. Fight for someone who's been lying to me for months? Someone who involved our daughter in covering up her affair? What exactly would I be fighting for? Fair point. The bar door opened and I turned to see a group of people I recognized from Celeste's work crowd. Patrick Brennan, the owner of the architectural firm. His wife Lila, the woman who'd been broadcasting my personal business to anyone who would listen. And bringing up the rear looking uncomfortable but trying to hide it, was Jasper Whitmore. They took a table in the corner, but I could feel their eyes on me. Small towns were like fishbowls. Everyone knew everyone else's business, and fresh gossip spread faster than wildfire. "This should be interesting," Rafe muttered. Lila Brennan had never been subtle about her opinions, and 3 cosmos into the evening, she was even less so. Her voice carried across the bar as she held court at their table. "I told Celeste years ago that she was wasting her talent in this town. She could be working for a major firm in Columbus or Cleveland, designing important buildings instead of strip malls and housing developments." "She's very talented," Jasper agreed, his voice carrying just enough for me to hear. "It's a shame she's been held back for so long, held back. As if I'd been some kind of anchor dragging her down instead of the person who'd supported her through architecture school, who'd taken out loans so she could afford her licensing exams, who'd worked overtime to pay for her professional development courses. The important thing is that she's finally free to pursue her real potential," Lila continued. "Some people are just meant for bigger things." I finished my whiskey and stood up. Rafe caught my arm. "Don't do anything stupid." "I'm just going to say hello." I walked over to their table with what I hoped looked like a friendly smile. "Evening, folks. Patrick, Lila, Jasper." The conversation stopped abruptly. Patrick Brennan looked embarrassed. Lila looked defiant, and Jasper looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "Evan," Patrick said carefully, "how are you holding up?" "Oh, I'm doing great. Really embracing this whole freedom concept everyone's been talking about." Lila's eyes narrowed. "I hope you're not planning to make things difficult for Celeste. She deserves to be happy." "Absolutely. Everyone deserves happiness. That's why I've made sure she's completely free to pursue whatever makes her happy. No financial obligations, no joint responsibilities, no safety net. Pure freedom." Jasper finally found his voice. "Look, Evan, I want you to know that I never intended for things to happen this way." "How did you intend for them to happen?" "I mean, I never wanted to hurt anyone. But you did want to sleep with my wife." The bar had gone quiet around us. Even the regulars at the other end had stopped talking to listen to our conversation. "It's not that simple," Jasper said. "Sure it is. You wanted something that belonged to someone else, so you took it. That's pretty simple." "Celeste doesn't belong to anyone," Lila interjected. "She's not property." "You're absolutely right. She's not property. She's a person who made promises, who built a life with someone, who had responsibilities. But you're all correct. She should be free from all that. Free to start over with nothing but her own resources and whatever support her new boyfriend can provide." I looked directly at Jasper. "I hope you're ready for that level of commitment. Supporting someone completely is a big responsibility, especially someone who's gotten used to a certain lifestyle." Jasper's face had gone pale. "What do you mean?" "I mean, Celeste likes nice things. Expensive dinners, designer clothes, luxury vacations. That dress she was wearing tonight? $300? Her car payment? $600 a month? Her credit card bills? Well, those are her problem now." Patrick Brennan cleared his throat. "Evan, maybe we should all take a step back here." "No need, Patrick. I'm stepping back permanently. In fact, I'm stepping so far back that your wife won't have me to complain about anymore. Celeste will be free to pursue those big opportunities Lila's always talking about. Maybe she can get that job in Columbus or Cleveland. I'm sure Jasper would be happy to relocate for love." I could see the wheels turning in Jasper's head as he processed what I was really saying. He was 28 years old, making decent money as a creative director, but nowhere near enough to support the lifestyle Celeste had grown accustomed to during our marriage. "I think we should go," he said quietly. "Probably a good idea," I agreed. "Congratulations on your new relationship. I hope it works out exactly as well as you both deserve." They left quickly, Lila shooting daggers at me over her shoulder. I returned to my seat at the bar, where Rafe was shaking his head. That was either brilliant or incredibly stupid. Maybe both. You realize you just declared war on some pretty connected people in this town. I ordered another whiskey. They declared war on me first. I'm just fighting back. Friday morning, while fixing Mrs. Henderson's faucet, my phone rang nonstop. Celeste called, then Mandy, then Patrick Brennan. He wanted me to stop making scenes about Celeste and Jasper. I told him I'd been invisible for 20 years, and now that I wasn't, it wasn't my problem. At noon, I came home. Celeste and Jasper were waiting. She begged me not to cut off accounts. I reminded her the house was mine and she had no claim. Jasper suggested I keep supporting her for a while. I laughed. He wanted me to fund their affair. If you want my wife, you get everything. The debt, the bills, the lifestyle, I said. Celeste cried. I stayed firm. She chose Jasper, and with that choice came consequences. You have until Sunday to move out, I told her. After that, the locks change. Driving away, I saw them stranded in the driveway. For the first time in months, I felt in control. Saturday night, I was in my garage working on the Ford's engine when I heard cars pulling into the driveway. Through the window, I could see Celeste's sedan followed by Jasper's BMW, followed by a third car I didn't recognize. They were all getting out, along with several other people. I wiped my hands and walked outside to find what looked like an intervention in progress. Celeste, Jasper, Mandy, Lila, and Patrick Brennan, and two other couples from their social circle, were standing in my driveway like some kind of concerned citizens committee. "Evening, folks," I said. "Little late for a neighborhood meeting, isn't it?" Patrick stepped forward, apparently elected as their spokesperson. "Evan, we're here because we're concerned about you." "That's touching. What exactly are you concerned about?" "About the way you're handling this situation. About the decisions you're making." Lila couldn't contain herself. "You're being vindictive and small. Celeste made a mistake, but that doesn't give you the right to destroy her life." "I'm not destroying anything. I'm just not supporting it anymore." Mandy finally spoke up, her voice shaking with anger. "Dad, you're embarrassing yourself. Everyone in town is talking about how pathetic you're being." "What are they saying?" "They're saying you can't handle the fact that Mom found someone better. They're saying you're acting like a child." I looked around at the group of people standing in my driveway, united in their certainty that I was the problem. These were Celeste's people, her friends, her colleagues, her daughter. They'd formed ranks against me, and I was outnumbered, but I wasn't outgunned. "You know what?" I said. "You're absolutely right. I have been acting badly. I've been selfish and vindictive, and that's not fair to anyone." The group relaxed slightly, thinking they'd gotten through to me. "So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this right." I pulled out my phone and opened the camera app. I want everyone in town to hear this directly from me. "What are you doing?" Celeste asked. "I'm going live on Facebook," making a public statement. Before anyone could stop me, I'd started the live stream. Within seconds, viewers started joining. Friends, neighbors, customers, people I'd known my entire life. "Good evening, everyone. Evan Mitchell here. I wanted to address some rumors that have been going around town about my marriage." The viewer count was climbing rapidly. 50 people, then 100, then more. "It's true that my wife Celeste has been having an affair with Jasper Whitmore from her architectural firm. It's also true that I've responded by cutting off her access to our joint finances." Gasps from the group in my driveway. Celeste was frantically gesturing for me to stop, but I was just getting started. "Now, some people think I'm being unreasonable. They think I should be more understanding about the fact that my wife has been sneaking around behind my back for months, meeting her boyfriend at hotels, planning romantic getaways, and involving our 18-year-old daughter in covering up her lies." The viewer count had passed 300. Comments were flooding in faster than I could read them. But you know what? They're right. I should be more understanding. In fact, I'm so understanding that I want everyone to know that Celeste is completely free to pursue her new relationship without any interference from me. I turned the camera toward the group. Here they are now, actually. My wife, her boyfriend, and all their friends who came here tonight to convince me that I should continue financially supporting my wife's affair. Jasper tried to step out of the camera's view, but I followed him. This is Jasper Whitmore, everyone. 28 years old, creative director, and apparently the love of my wife's life. Wave hello, Jasper. Turn that off, Celeste hissed. Why? I thought you wanted everyone to know about your relationship. I thought you were tired of hiding. I turned the camera back to myself. So here's what's going to happen. Celeste and Jasper are going to ride off into the sunset together, and I'm going to wish them well. I'm going to be so supportive that I'm not going to burden them with any financial help whatsoever. They're going to get to experience true love without the safety net of my income, my house, or my health insurance. The comment section was exploding. People were taking sides, asking questions, sharing the stream with their friends. Half the town was watching my marriage end in real time. I want everyone to join me in congratulating the happy couple on their new life together. A life built on honesty, trust, and whatever Jasper makes as a creative director in Millbrook, Ohio. I could see the realization dawning on Jasper's face. He was about to become financially responsible for a woman who'd been living off 2 incomes for 20 years, and he was going to do it on his single salary while the entire town watched. Any words for your fans, Celeste? My wife looked directly into the camera, her face streaked with tears and twisted with rage. You bastard! There you have it, folks. True love in action. I ended the live stream and put my phone away. The group stood in stunned silence, realizing that I'd just turned their intervention into a public spectacle that would be talked about in Millbrook for years. You've lost your mind, Lila said. No, I've found my backbone. There's a difference. I looked at each of them in turn. You all wanted me to be reasonable, to be understanding, to make this easy for everyone. Well, I've made it very easy. Celeste gets exactly what she wants, complete freedom from our marriage. And Jasper gets exactly what he wanted. My wife, with no competition from me. I turned to Celeste. Your things are packed and waiting by the front door. Don't come back. As they drove away, I could see my phone lighting up with notifications, messages, comments, friend requests, shares. The video was spreading across social media like wildfire, and by morning, everyone in 3 counties would know exactly what had happened to the Mitchell marriage. I went back to my garage, popped open a beer, and returned to work on my truck's engine. For the first time in 20 years, I was working on something that belonged entirely to me. The engine turned over on the first try. Sunday morning brought consequences I hadn't anticipated. My phone had been buzzing all night with calls, texts, and social media notifications. The live stream had been shared over 2,000 times and had accumulated nearly 50,000 views. I'd become locally famous overnight, though I wasn't sure if I was the hero or the villain of the story. The first call came from my brother in Toledo. Jesus, Evan, what the hell happened last night? Your video is all over Facebook. The second was from a reporter at the Millbrook Gazette, wanting to do a story about social media and modern divorce. The third was from a divorce attorney offering his services. I ignored them all and drove to Rafe's place. He was already open, serving coffee and breakfast to the Sunday morning crowd. The conversation stopped when I walked in, and I could feel every eye in the place on me. Well, Rafe said, pouring me a coffee without being asked, you certainly know how to make an exit. Is that what I did? Brother, you just became the most famous divorced man in Ohio. That video has been shared on every social media platform known to man. He showed me his phone. The live stream had been reposted on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Comments ranged from supportive, good for him, to critical, what a vindictive asshole, to amused, better than reality TV. Any word from Celeste? Radio silence. But I heard from my cousin who works at the Marriott. She and Jasper checked in there last night. Separate rooms. Separate rooms? Apparently, young Jasper is having second thoughts about his new responsibilities. I wasn't surprised. It was one thing to have an affair with a married woman whose husband was paying all the bills. It was another thing entirely to become solely responsible for supporting that woman's lifestyle. There's something else you should know, Rafe continued. Patrick Brennan was in here an hour ago. He looked rough. What did he want? Apparently, Lila is furious about being caught on your video. She's demanding he fire Celeste. Can he do that? Probably not legally. But he can make her life difficult. The irony wasn't lost on me. Lila Brennan, who'd spent months encouraging Celeste's affair and criticizing me for holding her back, was now angry that her role in the situation had been exposed publicly. My phone rang. Mandy. Dad, we need to talk. I'm listening. Not on the phone. Can you meet me at the park? Riverside Park sat on the banks of Mill Creek, the polluted waterway that had once powered the factories that built our town. I found Mandy sitting on a bench staring at the water. She looked older than her 18 years, tired in a way that had nothing to do with lack of sleep. That was really cruel, Dad. Which part? All of it. The video, the public humiliation, cutting Mom off financially. She's your wife. Was my wife, and she stopped acting like it months ago. Mandy turned to face me. She made a mistake. She made a choice. There's a difference. So you decided to destroy her life? I sat down next to my daughter, the child I'd raised, the person I'd thought would always be on my side no matter what. Mandy, did your mother tell you she was having an affair? She nodded reluctantly. Did you help her hide it from me? Another nod. Did you think that was okay? I thought you guys were getting divorced anyway. You hardly talked to each other anymore. You slept in separate bedrooms half the time. It was obvious you didn't love each other. And that made it okay for her to cheat? It made it understandable. I stared at the creek, watching garbage float past on the slow current. When did you stop being my daughter and start being her accomplice? I never stopped being your daughter. You chose sides, Mandy. You chose to help your mother lie to me for months. You chose to make me look like a fool in my own house. You chose to call me a loser to her face while I was in the garage trying to fix things that were broken. She was crying now, but I couldn't find it in myself to comfort her. She'd participated in my humiliation, and now she wanted me to pretend it didn't matter. I'm sorry, Dad. I really am. Sorry you did it, or sorry you got caught? Both. That's honest, at least. We sat in silence for several minutes, watching the water drift away the remnants of a fading industrial town. What happens now? She asked. Now you're an adult, and you get to live with the consequences of your choices, just like everyone else. Are you disowning me? I looked at her, this young woman who looked so much like her mother, who'd inherited Celeste's ambition and her willingness to sacrifice other people for her own benefit. I'm not disowning you. But I'm not going to pretend that what you did was okay, and I'm not going to pretend that we can just go back to the way things were. So where does that leave us? I don't know yet. She stood up to leave, then turned back. For what it's worth, I think Mom really did love you once. Once isn't enough, Mandy. Once doesn't get you through 20 years of marriage. Once doesn't justify lying and cheating and betrayal. I know. After she left, I sat alone in the park for another hour, watching the sun set over the ruins of my old life. Tomorrow, I'd have to figure out how to build a new one. Monday morning arrived with a knock on my door at 7 a.m. I opened it to find Jasper Whitmore standing on my porch, looking like he hadn't slept in days. We need to talk, he said. Do we? Please. 5 minutes. I let him in and poured 2 cups of coffee. He sat at my kitchen table in the chair where Celeste used to read the morning paper and tried to find the words he'd come to say. "This isn't how I wanted things to happen," he began. "How did you want them to happen?" "I don't know. More gradually, I guess, with less drama." "You mean you wanted to keep sneaking around indefinitely?" He nodded miserably. "Celeste she's more complicated than I realized." "Expensive, you mean?" "It's not just the money. It's everything. She has very specific expectations about how she should be treated, where she should live, what kind of life she should have." I sipped my coffee and waited for him to continue. "I'm 28 years old, Evan. I live in a one-bedroom apartment and drive a car that's not even paid off yet. I can't give her the life she's used to." "Then why did you pursue her?" "Because she was beautiful and sophisticated, and she made me feel important." "Because she was married to someone else, so I didn't think I'd ever have to deal with the reality of actually being with her." The honesty was refreshing, even if it was coming about 6 months too late. "What do you want from me, Jasper?" "I want you to take her back." I set down my coffee cup and stared at him. "Excuse me?" "I want you to work things out with her. I want to go back to the way things were before." "Before you were sleeping with my wife, you mean?" "Yes." "And you think that's possible?" "I think it's the best solution for everyone involved." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the neighborhood where I'd lived for 20 years. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly. You want me to take back my cheating wife so that you don't have to support her financially?" "That's not how I'd put it." "How would you put it?" "I'd say that you two have history together. You have a daughter together. You built a life together. That has to count for something." It did count for something. Right up until she decided to throw it away for a 28-year-old creative director. Jasper slumped in his chair. "I made a mistake." "No, you made a choice. Just like she did, and now you get to live with the consequences. She's going to be homeless, Evan. Patrick fired her this morning. That stopped me cold." "He fired her?" "Lila was furious about being in your video. She gave Patrick an ultimatum. Either Celeste goes, or she divorces him and takes half the business. So he chose his wife over his employee. Can you blame him?" Actually, I couldn't. Patrick Brennan had built his architectural firm over 30 years. He wasn't going to risk losing it to protect an employee who'd become a public relations nightmare. "Where is Celeste now?" "Still at the hotel. She's been crying for 2 days straight." I felt a flicker of something that might have been sympathy, but it died quickly. "That's not my problem anymore." "It could be, if you wanted it to be." I turned back to face him. "Jasper, let me explain something to you. My wife didn't just cheat on me. She humiliated me. She involved our daughter in lying to me. She made me into a fool in my own house, in my own marriage, in my own life. I know, but I'm not finished. She did all of that because she thought I was weak. She thought I was pathetic. She thought I would just accept whatever scraps of affection she was willing to throw my way while she pursued her real happiness with you." I sat back down across from him. She was wrong. And now she gets to find out exactly how wrong she was. Jasper left without another word, and I never saw him again. I heard later that he'd taken a job with a firm in Cleveland and left town within the week. That evening, I was in my garage when I heard a car pull into the driveway. Through the window, I could see it was Celeste's sedan. She sat in the driver's seat for several minutes before finally getting out and walking to the garage. She looked terrible. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes wrinkled, her face puffy from crying. This wasn't the sophisticated, confident woman who'd been having an affair. This was someone who'd run out of options. "Evan?" I didn't look up from the engine I was working on. "What do you want, Celeste?" "I want to come home." "This isn't your home anymore." "Please, I have nowhere else to go. You have Jasper." Jasper left. He took a job in Cleveland. I finally looked at her. So when it came time to actually take care of you, he ran away. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. And now you want me to take care of you instead. I want us to try again. I want to fix this. There's nothing to fix, Celeste. You broke it. You broke us. You broke our family. You broke 20 years of marriage because you were bored and selfish and you thought you deserved better. I was wrong. Yes, you were. But being wrong doesn't undo what you did. She sank onto an old chair in the corner of the garage, sobbing now. I don't have any money. I don't have a job. I don't have anywhere to live. You have a college degree and 20 years of experience as an architect. You'll figure it out. No one in this town will hire me after what happened. Then leave town. With what money? You took everything. I set down my wrench and faced her fully. I took what was mine, what I earned, what I saved, what I worked for while you were sneaking around with your boyfriend. We were married. That money belonged to both of us. We were married when you decided to cheat. Marriage didn't seem to matter much to you then. She looked around the garage at the tools and projects and accumulated debris of my solitary life. This is really it? This is how it ends? This is how you ended it. I'm just refusing to pretend otherwise. She stood up slowly, like an old woman. I loved you once, Evan. I really did. I know. And I loved you too. But love isn't enough when one person decides to destroy everything you built together. She walked to the door, then stopped. What about Mandy? What about her? She needs her mother. She needed her mother to be honest with her father. She needed her mother to act like an adult instead of a teenager having a secret affair. She needed her mother to consider what her actions would do to her family. She's still my daughter. Yes, she is. And you'll have to figure out how to be her mother without my help. Celeste left without another word. I watched her drive away, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt something like peace. The garage was quiet except for the sound of my tools and the distant hum of traffic on the interstate. I returned to my work, fixing things that could be fixed, accepting that some things couldn't be repaired once they were broken. My phone buzzed with a text from Rafe. You okay? I texted back, yeah, I'm free. And for the first time in years, I actually was.